What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. I am Ricardo, your NBA sports journalist, and today we have a prediction from one of the most respected basketball minds in the history of this sport that I think every single person who follows this league needs to hear. Because when Mike D'Antoni, the man who revolutionized NBA offense with the 7 seconds or less Suns, the coach who unlocked Steve Nash, Amare Stoudemire, and James Harden at different points in his career, makes a bold prediction about a player, you stop and you listen. Mike D'Antoni says Victor Wembanyama will win MVP for the next 10 years. 10 years. In a row, same player, same award. A decade of dominance so complete that D'Antoni is not even entertaining the possibility of competition. Now let me be very clear about something before we go any further. This is a bold prediction. It is an extraordinary prediction. And the history of bold predictions in the NBA suggests that 10 consecutive MVPs for any player, regardless of how talented, is genuinely unlikely. Michael Jordan never won 10 consecutive MVPs. LeBron James never won 10 consecutive MVPs. Nobody has ever done it. The award has always had interruptions, surprises, years where a different player peaks at the right moment. But here is what makes D'Antoni's prediction worth taking seriously rather than dismissing as hyperbole. He is not basing it on Wembanyama's offense. He is not saying Wembanyama is going to score 50 points a game for a decade. He is basing it on something much harder to replicate, much harder to scheme around, much harder to neutralize over time. Wembanyama's defensive impact. And that is where this conversation gets genuinely fascinating. D'Antoni is a legendary offensive mind. He spent his entire coaching career building systems designed to attack defenses, to create mismatches, to score as quickly and efficiently as possible before the defense can organize. 7 seconds or less was not just a philosophy, it was a systematic assault on every defensive principle in the NBA. He has spent decades understanding how offenses beat defenses. And he is saying that Victor Wembanyama's defensive presence is the one thing he cannot design an offense to consistently overcome. Let me tell you exactly why. At 7 feet 4 inches with the wingspan of a small aircraft, Wembanyama can protect the rim without leaving the paint in a way that fundamentally breaks modern NBA offensive principles. Pick-and-roll basketball, which has been the dominant offensive system in this league for the past 2 decades, relies on the screener's defender having to make a choice. Do you go under the screen and give up the 3? Do you go over and potentially get separated from your man? Do you switch and create a mismatch? Every pick and roll contains within it a decision that creates an advantage for the offense. Wembanyama eliminates that decision. At his size, with his length, he can sit in the paint and contest both the ball handler coming off the screen and the roll man cutting to the basket simultaneously. He does not have to choose because his physical dimensions cover both options at the same time. That is physically impossible for a normal NBA defender. It is possible for Wembanyama. And then there is the shot blocking. Not just the blocks themselves, the anticipation, the positioning, the basketball IQ that allows him to be exactly where the shot is going before the offensive player has decided to shoot it. Anthony Edwards, one of the most explosive athletes in the entire NBA, has publicly joked that players celebrate when Wembanyama leaves the game because his presence makes drives to the basket feel impossible. Think about what that means. One of the best scorers in the league is relieved when a defensive player exits. That is the level of psychological and physical deterrence Wembanyama creates. D'Antoni coached against defenses built around dominant big men throughout his career. He faced Tim Duncan's Spurs in some of the most memorable playoff matchups of the 2000s. He coached against Dwight Howard, against Andrew Bynum, against the best defensive centers of his era. And he is saying, with all of that experience, with all of that knowledge of how to design offenses that beat dominant bigs, Wembanyama is different. Wembanyama is something that the offensive systems he built his career on cannot consistently solve. Now, let me give you the honest counter-argument, because I always want to give you both sides. The counter-argument to the 10-year MVP prediction is SGA. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is 26 years old. He is the leading MVP candidate right now in these playoffs. He is playing for a team that has gone 8-1 in the postseason. He is averaging 30 points in the conference finals with a 9-1 assist-to-turnover ratio, and he has shown, across multiple seasons, the kind of consistent elite performance that MVP awards are built on. If OKC wins the championship, and they are still the favorite in this series despite losing Game 1, SGA almost certainly wins Finals MVP and builds enormous momentum for regular season MVP consideration next year. A player on a championship team who performs at this level does not lose MVP races easily, and SGA is young enough to be doing this for the next decade himself. The other counter-argument is Wembanyama's health. He is an extraordinary physical specimen, but he is also a player whose body, 7 feet 4 inches of length and leverage, creates different stress points than a conventional NBA player. Staying healthy for 10 consecutive seasons at a dominant level is something very few players in history have managed, and an MVP campaign requires sustained excellence across 65 to 70 regular season games, not just a brilliant playoff run. But here is why D'Antoni's prediction ultimately resonates with me as a basketball journalist who has been watching this league for a long time. The prediction is not really about 10 consecutive MVP trophies. It is about the nature of Wembanyama's dominance. It is about the fact that what he does on a basketball floor, the defensive presence, the offensive versatility, the combination of rim protection and three-point shooting and passing is so unique, so unprecedented, so resistant to the normal cycle of adaptation that the league goes through with every new dominant player, that his window of elite performance is genuinely different from what we have seen before. Every dominant player in NBA history eventually gets figured out to some degree. The league adapts, coaches find schemes, players develop counters. Dwight Howard got figured out. Offenses learn to space around him and take away his physicality advantages. Shaq got figured out. Eventually, defenses found ways to manage his post dominance by fouling strategically and adapting spacing. Even Michael Jordan got figured out in certain series by teams willing to commit fully to specific defensive schemes. Wembanyama is harder to figure out because his advantages exist simultaneously on both ends of the floor in ways that create contradictory problems for opposing teams. If you space the floor to neutralize his rim protection, you have just made his job easier on defense because now he has clear sightlines on every drive. If you pack the paint to protect the rim against him offensively, he shoots threes at 35 to 40% from distances that make those help defenders irrelevant. There is no clean solution. There is no scheme that fully addresses what he does because what he does is designed seemingly by nature itself to have no clean answer. Mike D'Antoni has spent his career designing clean answers to defensive problems, and he is saying he cannot find one for Wembanyama when the greatest offensive mind of his generation admits defeat to a defensive player. That is the moment you realize the prediction might not be as outrageous as it sounds. 10 MVP awards in 10 years. Is it probable? History says no. But is it the most reasonable prediction anyone has made about the trajectory of Victor Wembanyama's career? After watching Game 1 of the Western Conference Finals, after seeing 41 points and 24 rebounds and 3 blocks in double overtime at 22 years old, I am not sure I have a better counter prediction to offer. I am Ricardo, your NBA sports journalist. Smash that like button, subscribe for daily NBA and WNBA coverage, and drop a comment below. Do you believe Mike D'Antoni's prediction? 10 consecutive MVPs for Wembanyama. Possible or impossible? See you in the next one.